Good evening, everyone. Thanks for being here tonight. We're here for City Council meeting. It's Monday, March 18th, 2019, and we'll start this meeting with a roll call and determination of quorum.
Solomon, Modrick, Nordstrom, Drew, Scott, Drury, Laurenti, Roberts, Armstrong, Lewis. We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. Now we'll have the invocation by Scott Wiley. And following the invocation, we'll have the Pledge of Allegiance.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for this good day that you've given us. We thank you for our community. We thank you for our city council. We thank you for our citizens and all who are concerned for the public welfare. We give you praise that we are able to be in a community such as this. And we pray, Father, that you would guide the proceedings tonight, that we would have the hand of your Spirit upon us, that you would give wisdom and grace and unity, and that all that we do will be glorifying to you and productive and beneficial to your servants. And we pray it in Christ's name. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the United States of America, nation under God, indivisible, with liberty.
Thank you, everyone. And now on to the adoption of the agenda. This is the time when the council can adopt the agenda as written, or they can make alterations to it. Would there be a motion? Motion to approve the agenda as written, second by Darla Drew. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed say no. Motion carries. And now we have an award to give out tonight. I'd like to have Catherine Gresseth with the Mayor's Committee for People with Disabilities come up and bring the rest of the committee members.
Good evening. Thank you for being here. Each year we choose a group or someone who has gone above and beyond to help better the lives of people with disabilities. And that affects all of us in so many ways. And this year we have chosen Bethel Assembly of God, and to talk about what they have done this year and the project that they have taken on is Melanie.
Hi, my name is Melanie Barclay, and in addition to being a part of the Mayor's Committee for people with disabilities, I'm also a parent of a very, very amazing child who has disabilities. And 2 years ago, last year was our first year to participate in Night to Shine. And it is an event put on by the Tim Tebow Foundation nationwide and around the world. And Bethel Assembly of God has taken upon themselves to include that amazing event in our community. And it's really a very unique opportunity for people with special needs, 14 years and older, to participate in a prom. And they're able to get donated dresses. They come in a limousine, or they come to the event and are offered limousine rides. They receive corsages. They get their hair and their makeup done. They are paired with a volunteer date if they choose to. My daughter actually invited her grandpa to be her date, which was really cute. And they're celebrated for the uniqueness that they have, and it's just until the world catches up with the Tim Tebow Foundation and realizes how special and unique these people are and what an importance they have in our community. We've got Bethel Assembly of God to do that for us at least one night a year to really celebrate. So I'd like to invite Keith Culver up. He is one of the pastors at Bethel Assembly, and he spearheaded this event. And so we'd like to present him with our Above and Beyond Award from the Mayor's Committee from People with Disabilities.
this is for everybody at Bethel Church. This is for everybody who volunteered for this amazing event. It would not happen without those people. So I'm just heading it up. You know, it's all about our special needs friends. It's all about those who come out and take time out of their day to make this an incredible night. So I want to thank them for that too.
Also, thanks to Pastor Jared Strong just for being awesome. Okay, this is the point where we usually have the general public comment. We don't have any general public comment items. We have some others that we'll get to in just a minute. So we won't have a general public comment time. We'll go into non-public hearing items, items 2 through 48, and we'll open public comment on items 2 through 23. And there are no items with speaker requests for those 2 through 23. So we'll go on to consent items 2 through 23. Are there items the council would like to pull off the agenda? Or would we make a motion? Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve items 2 through 23. All in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. On to non-consent items, 24 through 48. We'll open public comment on those items, and we have a few speaker requests. First on item 26, Dane Butler. And just so everyone knows tonight, you get the microphone is hot. You have 3 minutes. You can watch these lights up here, see how you're doing. It's just like a traffic light. When it hits to red, time for you to go back and give your time to someone else, okay?
Okay.
Please state your name and continue.
I'm Dave Butler. I'm here representing McGuire's on the rezone and really asking for your help. We've got 9.5 acres that has been in with the family for a little over 40 years. They purchased the property way back when they lived on Grandview because they wanted to have the views. They didn't want anything behind them. They wanted to be able to park vehicles on it. They no longer live there. The father who purchased the property has passed away, and they're really stuck with what to do with it. We came before the council about 1.5 years ago, and they wanted us to do about $10,000 worth of soil samples and geothermal testing. The McGuire's are not the developers. They would just like to be able to sell the property. We've tried to sell it, zoned as it is, Park Forest, and have had 0 takers. We've talked to the city, who told us to talk to the county about raising the valuation so we could donate it to the city. The county refused to raise the valuation on it, so they couldn't get tax credits for it. You guys have received, what I saw was 4, I guess, emails against the rezone, and I don't know if you've read those, but I would like to read portions of it of why the people are fighting it. It says, part of the appeal of this property, we purchased that there were no neighbors in the rear of our yard. This development would undoubtedly spoil the aspect of the quality of our life, not to mention the likely years of construction we would have to endure. Having a few areas around town aren't developed are not a bad thing. And another one was, putting houses on that section of land seems obtrusive in both current landowners and the flora and fauna that call a small park home. The McGuires pay $4,000 to $6,000 a year to maintain this property. They get notification from the city every summer at least once about fire danger. I just don't see where you can think it's fair that they have to pay so other people can enjoy, by their own words, a park in their backyard. It just doesn't seem right to me that you're limiting what they can do. Our only option at this point is to make it a cemetery. From a park forest, it's to call cemeteries and see if we can make it a cemetery. That's the only option you're giving us. Thank you.
Thank you. And the next speaker request is on item 44. And I'm pretty sure the name is Stephanie Digler. Both of you, something with an M? Martin? Martin and Stephanie Digler on item 44.
Thank you for having us here. Like you said, my name is Martin and my wife's name is Stephanie. We moved here to Rapid City in 2014, October, from Wisconsin. And we went to find a house for our family, and we couldn't find a house, so we bought a piece of land and we decided to build our house. And our house was built, we found a builder, he built our home and completed the building in 2016. We moved in the house in May of 2016 with our son, who was born at that time on the 13th. So we moved there, and before then, we had the city, the equalization, send a appraiser to come and appraise our home to get the taxes and stuff like that. And we were not home at the time, but then they left a message on my wife's phone for us to call. My wife called back because I was at work, I was not available. So she called back, and the person went through the process so that we can get the tax for our home, our property. And during that process, there was nothing discussed about unoccupied home or occupied home. And so since that time, we've been in our home until just recently a friend of ours told us, have you checked your tax assessment to see whether your house is owner-occupied or owner-unoccupied? We said, we have not really paid attention. What is that? What is owner-occupied or what is owner-unoccupied? And he told us, and then we went towards checking what that was, and we saw that our home was owner-occupied. And we got to know that if your home is owner-occupied, you have like, you pay 20% more or 22% more on your taxes. And so we called the area, the equalization office, we changed that to owner-occupied because we didn't know at the time. So this was in February or, beginning of February, we did that. But then we started to tell the equalization department that we didn't know what owner-occupied means or what owner-occupied meant. So we started to plead, we apply for abatement because this is not new to us. We wrote the application and the reason for why we are applying for abatement, and Shannon, who is the director, told us will be denied. So the commissioner, we went to them and started talking with them, and then they said we had to come to the city council first before we can go back to the commissioner department. And so that's why we are here to get abatement, because we've been paying overly.
Okay, thank you. When we get to item 44, if you'd stay in the audience, we may have council members who want to talk to you more at that time, okay? Interesting. Okay, now on item 46, We have Jerry Freed.
Thank you. Thank you. My name is Jerry Freed, Rapid City. I have a concern about the proposal on number 46, additional funding for One Heart. This in no way has to do with not being sensitive to the needs represented there, but I think there needs to be a strong consideration for capping what has been allocated and finishing out Fitzgerald, and I have no vested interest there, but I just have a concern about the practicality of more money going to the One Heart program. For example, I've not been able to learn of a pattern or of sustainability for that. I think One Heart has wonderful goals, but if they've got $11 million, and I don't know if that includes what this council has already allocated to them or not, I'm assuming it does, but I don't know that. I would think you could take $2 million for sustainability out of that 11 and leave you about 9, and you could do some good things toward the goals with that. And I just think we need a cap on that. I guess you can't use vision funds for potholes, but I don't know that for sure. But believe me, there'll be $1 million worth of potholes after this severe winter, just as an example. No lack for a place to put the funds, but I really hope this council will consider a limit and will do what's sensible. I know that we often comes up about San Antonio, and they've had great results, and this is a parallel program, but you know, that's 2.5 million people or something, and we have a lot less here, and I don't think they necessarily match up. But I'm sure this council will take a hard look at the sustainability factor and where that's going to go, and maybe ask that program to deal with the 11 million that it has and go from there. Thank you.
Thank you. And also on item 46, Martha Cook.
Thank you. My name's Martha Cook, and I have seen firsthand the need for, if anything, we need a place for housing for people who do not have a home. In particular, the gentleman that lost his life during the storm. If he had had a place to stay, he would not have died. He would not have froze to death. I have not heard his name, but I know everybody at the church there, the Lutheran church there. They're all devastated as to what happened to the man. I have a friend who I've been trying to help since about July, and she desperately needs a place to stay. And she is not comfortable with what is currently available. She has had several traumatic events in her life, and it has left her in a bit of shock. If certain things happen, she just got to get out of that area, because then she starts getting anxious. The proposal that One Heart is proposing will be 100% financed with only $1 million more. They came and did a presentation at our parish, and that's all they need, and it'll be 100% financed. That includes any renovations that are needed. They'll be completely covered with just $1 million more. And that was presented to us just a couple Fridays ago at St. Therese Parish. I think this is a very good proposal from One Heart. However, I am concerned that the city can pull the rug out from under them, and I am quite concerned about that. 5 years might be enough time, but I am greatly concerned that they would be left with, you know, it'll be there for 5 years and then it'll be gone. And that would leave a lot of people very sad, and they'd be without a place to live, even though it's meant to be temporary. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, and that'll close our public comment period. Oh, I'm sorry. Didn't see you. Can you tell us your name, please?
I'm sorry, I didn't get on the agenda there. My name is Sherry Scudder. I am a resident of Rapid City. I have served in the housing field for 43 years. I am recently retired. I volunteer now for many organizations, including the Veterans Homelessness. I have been involved with the One Heart campus in the preliminary hearings, finding out what they will do and what they're going to do for the community. I feel that homelessness costs the city, the county, the state many of dollars just by having them homeless on the street. Working in housing for the 43 years, I know this to be very true. Getting a person a house is on their way to stability, and I truly believe and in favor of the One Heart program, and I hope that you will fund it and you will find funds for the Fitzgerald through other means. So I am speaking in affirmative for the One Heart Center.
Okay, thank you. Okay, now we'll close the public comment period, and we'll start under ordinances with item 24. Second reading, ordinance 6308, an ordinance to amend chapter 13.32 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to city cemeteries. Motion to approve by Solomon and a second by Laurenti. I'm going to punch your button. Now we'll go to Laura Armstrong.
Thank you. It looks like the verbiage is different from the first reading to the second reading, so I'd like Mr. Beegler to explain that to the council, please. Just one word difference, but...
Okay. Mr.
Thank
Beegler?
you. Yes, thank you very much. Jeff Bigler, Parks and Recreation Director. We did find one word that needed to be struck since the first reading. It pertains to subsection 13.32.340 in the container for ashes of cremated remains. And it's the word "in." It should have been struck before. It does not substantially alter the substance of the ordinance from the first reading, so we're recommending that the second reading and adoption of this ordinance as amended.
Okay. Yeah. Assume that's okay with the motion maker? Yep. Okay. Now, all in favor of approval of item 24, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Item 25, second reading, ordinance 6312 regarding supplemental appropriation number 1 for 2019. Motion to approve by Drew, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Item number 26, first reading, ordinance 6313, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of Chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by KTM Design Solutions for McGuire Services LLC for a rezoning request from Park Forest to low-density residential for property generally described as being located southeast of the intersection of Oak Avenue and Indiana Street. And we have some lights, so we'll go to Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion, since we already approved the agenda, to consider item number 26 and 45 together. According to Mr. Ken Young, these two, a decision on one would affect both of them. So if we could take that vote and see if the council will allow the discussion of item number 26 and item number 45 to be held at this time.
Is there any objection to the motion made by Amanda Scott? Okay, then that item will be approved by unanimous consent.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll yield at this time.
Okay. Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Just to disclose, I had some conversation through email with Mr. Butler because I had shown my concern on this item when it was before us in 2017, I think it was, and had gone up. And in the neighborhood, when I talked with them as well at that time, it wasn't the concern of the views, but some of the conditions that they were having with their homes. And that was the soil instability. And I know that that had a lot to do with the decision at that time. I went into one of the homes. They had their entire house drop. And that whole side was really of a concern. So it was part forest, perhaps for an additional reason besides having a protection of view without having homes behind it. And I know you stated that the owners don't want to spend the $10,000 to do the soil sample study, but that $10,000 could save them hundreds of thousands if there is a stability issue. And for sailing reasons, I think it's important as well for them to know what the ground stability is. That's why it went into denial and why the council had requested more survey and more study on those acreage. I know you're raising your hand, so if I could have the liberty, Mr. Mayor, to allow Mr. Butler to come up.
Yes.
Thank you. So, Mr. Butler, I'd like to give you, I only get a moment here, so if you could just do a statement quite quickly.
Well, that's fine. I was just going to address, I could understand your concerns if the McGuires were going to develop it, but if they spend the $10,000 to do the soil studies and the geothermal, that's all to waste, because as soon as somebody presents a development plan to planning and zoning, they're going to have to do all of that again. So you're asking them to spend $10,000 on maybe a $70,000 piece of property because of the development costs, and it's all going to go to, it's all going to go to waste.
I don't think it could go to waste. I think there's an opportunity probably for recovery on that, because it is very important. We know we've got some slippery slopes in our community, and they don't go away. I mean, they have given neighborhoods troubles for a long time, and the neighbors that are around there, they have lost foundations, they've lost driveways, they've lost garages, they've lost their basements. So it's a concern of that area, and not knowing what the next owner would do if we change this. Since we're moving 46 up, if we change the item that Amanda Scott, our councilwoman, did, then it changes everything, and it may even loosen that. I'm concerned with it. I would have loved for you to have brought to us that $10,000 study report that says, look, we can put these 3 houses in, and it's not going to affect the rest of the neighborhood that's already been affected.
But we don't, well, a couple of factors on that. One, building has come a long way. They know how to address shale soils, unstable soils by doing overdigs. The second piece is, right now they don't need to have the council's approval to build 3 houses. So they could go in right now, if they found somebody that wanted to pay, the $750,000 to connect to city sewer, city water, they could build 3 houses and the council could do nothing about it as long as they met city code. So all of those complaints, I guess, or all the concerns that the homeowners have can already be eliminated. The problem that the McGuires have, and what we're asking for is, and I made a mistake in the beginning, taking advice from other people, that we submitted a plan through KTM on a 14-house development. All we're asking for is a rezone. They cannot sell the property the way it sits with the development cost and having to make this fight as Park Forest. I've talked to every developer in Rapid City. Nobody will look at it unless it's zoned low-density residential. It doesn't change what the council does or what planning and zoning. If you zone this low-density residential, you can put all the stipulations you want on the developer. You can tell the developer, I want geothermal, I want this, I want this, I want, all of those things can be added to the property once they present the PUD.
So if I could stop you a moment, just because I want to throw this over, maybe Ken can help me, I don't see Dale, but I just need to ask the question, is that factual? And I've got 13 seconds. Can anybody answer that?
Currently, a building permit could be issued for one home on the property. It is possible that the property could be subdivided with the plat approved to allow for 3. But with that, we could have those stipulations put on there for the soil testing and such. But yeah, there certainly would be a need for, regardless of the zoning, for having some kind of testing on the soils.
I agree.
Well, which is city code. Any house that pulls a building permit has to have soil testing.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Butler.
Okay, John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and I was going to bring that up. Dave, you might as well come back up for a second. I was going to bring that up. City code says that we have to do soil testing on every single lot. So at this point, just doing a rezone does absolutely nothing except for it rezones the property for them. That doesn't mean tomorrow they can go pull building permits and build 14 houses. They still have to go through the city. They've got to get their, their permits. They've got to get it rezoned.
Everything.
They've got to get, they've got to get it platted. And once you get into that platting process, that's when you're going to get the requirements for your soils, your roads, but at this point, and I know exactly what you're beating your head up against, Dave, because you're right, nobody's going to buy it unless you find that one person that wants to put one house on there, which they're not going to pay that much money in that neighborhood for that piece of property. And I have to apologize. I spoke to Dave a little bit beforehand too, so I want to make that clear. Apologize for, I think I stood you up for breakfast the other morning, and
but that's okay.
I had to take my wife to work, and I forgot about you. So anyway, I'm sorry about that. I just think the council is putting the cart in front of the horse on this one. This zoning change really does nothing except for allows them to sell this to somebody else that may have the money to come in and spend whatever the council and the planning and zoning decides to do. So anyway, I think I'm going to support this zoning change. I think it's the right thing to do. I don't like to see landowners limited and have their hands tied and not even have an opportunity. I mean, like he said, they're paying a lot of money on this property every year so the people in the neighborhood can have it as a park. If that's the case, let's pony up on this council and let's buy this land so it is a park. But they shouldn't just have the opportunity to have it for free. So anyway, thank you.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. I don't know if this is a question for you, Mr. Butler, or if it's for Pauline, Finance Officer. But my question is, you made reference to the county refused to raise the valuation so you could give it away? They could give it away?
Yes, last time we went through this, I talked to the city, and they said, and I said, the McGuires, if they could get the valuation up where it was worth it to get a tax break on it, they would donate it to the city. The city told me to go to the county. We went down and talked to the county, and they said no, they would not raise the valuation on it. So it does no good to, if you could help with that, that's...
Well, and yeah, like one of my colleagues said it in the side of my ear, it would go up when it's rezoned. Do you know, may I ask Finance Officer for something, please?
Yes.
Pauline, do you know how we could get this completed, to just have it donated? Because, actually, I hate to see this beautiful piece of Rapid City, because I like driving around Rapid City and seeing hillsides that are steep and they don't look buildable. I think that it's part of the beauty of our town. So I'm just wondering if there's a way to do this.
I will tell you that as far as I know, that has never been requested as a condition of donating anything to the city. Any land that we've gotten a donation on, the landowner that's donating the property actually has an appraisal done for tax purposes. They are, in fact, I'm still waiting on one of these from one of our donors. And then on the form that comes in, that's where it says what the value is. I don't know what the magic number is that they need. I don't know what an appraiser would do for them, but that's what they've done in the past, is had somebody, the donor has hired an appraiser to come in, give them a value on the land that they're donated to the city, so that way they can write that off.
May I go back to Mr. Butler, Mayor?
Yes.
Do you think that McGuire's might be willing to do that?
I think they would, yes.
With that,
He would be willing to take it.
okay, I think we should maybe just continue this until Mr. Butler and the McGuires have a chance to look into it, and maybe we could just get the land donated to us. But I probably can't make the motion. I yield.
Okay, Chad Lewis.
I'd like to make a motion to approve. I get a second?
Yes.
Thank you, and keep the floor. Well,
the motion is to approve
Item 26.
26. Okay, go ahead.
Right. I guess my point on this, I spoke on this the first time this came around, and I said I think I got my first concussion on this hill sledding. That's probably why I'm up here today, and I think that I know a good portion of this has been basically a community park for years, and so I can understand why the neighborhood probably sees it that way, but ultimately it does belong to someone who's been paying taxes on it, keeping it up, taking care of it. So, we can't just expect them to do that in perpetuity. If they could quit paying taxes on it altogether, and then it becomes the city's problem, and then who's going to take care of it? So
That was what the attorney told us.
well, I'm sure they've had that advice. I'm not saying something that doesn't happen all the time. It's a big problem, but I can't imagine. All we're doing is rezoning it, like it's been said. So all that does is change the zone, the possibilities. But I can't imagine a realtor worth his salt, or any developer worth their salt, is going to write a purchase agreement that's not contingent upon soil condition testing or some sort of study being done before that's anyway. So it's not like we're just going to say, oh, this land's for sale and you're going to buy it now. The city says there's going to be a lot of contingencies on a sale like that, folks. It's not just going to happen overnight, and they're not just going to make it happen. So to go ahead and to rezone it really is not that big a deal in my opinion. Like I said, it might increase the valuation, which probably increases the tax rolls temporarily at least. But I do have another idea, since it seems to be the popular idea up here about infill. I don't know, why don't we just get a TIF and develop it? Well, throwing that out there. Anybody wants to do infill TIFs, this would be a great little project for that. So anyway, I fully support the rezone. Thank you.
Okay. Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to support this change in zoning. I think the McGuires have been very patient on this entire project. It is an infill project, as Chad mentioned. I don't know if they could get a TIF on it, but certainly it does hit some of our buttons on as far as not building new roads for an area and not putting in new water mains for an area. It just kind of hits a lot of things that we have to do if we're building outside of the city limits or outside of the city. Right now, we could maybe increase our tax rolls by having these, homes go into this area. So for right now, yeah, as lovely as it might be, I'm sure most of this city was beautiful before we built homes on everything. So let's just go ahead and say build away. And the building practices have changed. As long as these people know what they're getting into, and we're not going to hear from them again, I probably won't be here in 10 years. But regardless, as long as we're not setting up future councils for more problems, I think that this is a good project, and I'll be voting to rezone. Thank you.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. May I direct a question to Ken Young, please?
Yes.
Ken, can I have you, just for the community and the council's sake, explain the differences in these zonings and what they can and can't do without authorization, and particularly, I suppose, regarding the soil, if you don't mind?
Okay. Yeah, currently, without providing any soil analysis, we could grant one building permit for a home on that property. In order to meet the maximum ability of zoning, we would have to approve a 3-lot plat on that property, which could have the stipulations for soil analysis and other drainage and other types of studies. So we could place that requirement on without the zoning. With the zoning, it would allow for 6,500 square foot lots, potentially, which I think we've determined could be at least 14 lots up there, given the fact that we would still require, of course, soil analysis and drainage and other things up there. So potentially 14 may be too many in the end, but there could be somewhere between 3 and 14 approvable with a lot, as long as they met all the stipulations and the studies up there. So I guess what it boils down to is a determination on behalf of the council as to whether this is an appropriate area or land usage on this property. Is it preferable to develop it as infill development? Is it preferable to have it maintained as open space or park? So there's different ways of looking at that. But yeah, there's definitely an ability to develop as long as they meet the requirements of the stipulations that are given.
Thank you. And, you know, for me, the only hesitation are safety concerns, and I would say the soil, obviously drainage, those sorts of things. But since we're going to have guardrails in place, regardless of whatever, if there's ever a development, who knows what the future of this land is, but those are in place to make sure that we're testing those and that there's a plan in place to mitigate any effects to the neighbors. So because we have that in place, I can support the motion on the floor. But that, you know, that's a big if. Of course, it'd be great if it's open space, but I don't want to tell somebody else what to do with their land unless we're willing to pay for it. So it's their land, as long as it's not negatively impacting the neighbors. And that's always the biggest thing, especially on the safety concern. So I support this. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. May I also ask Mr. Kenyon a couple follow-up questions?
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, after listening to the discussion tonight, with all the stipulations and the regular planning things that have to be accomplished in order for any development, even if it stayed Forest Park right now or Park Forest, they would still have to have some stipulations for building a building permit and being able to construct on there, and then there's always the inspections of the building. So with the discussion, I'm really leaning towards approving this. So before I make my final decision, though, Ken, this is coming to us with a recommendation from the Planning Commission to deny. What was the reason the Planning Commission made the motion to deny?
There was not a comfort level at the Planning Commission that this development as proposed and as it came forward initially was associated with an actual development plan. So it showed, I believe, 14 lots on there and some roadways and such. So that was without any soil analysis or drainage studies or anything like that. So that's what threw up the red flag. So because they did see a proposal for development on there, they felt very uncomfortable to go forward with anything before they saw the results of those studies. But again, if we're looking at solely a zoning question, then it's really about whether we feel this property is appropriate for residential development. Whether or not it can meet the full maximum capacity that zoning would allow, that's all going to be determined by the soils analysis and other studies.
So even when the Planning Commission was considering this, and even if it was in conjunction with a planned development, did they approve or deny both items? Or, you know, that's what they did, is they didn't separate the items, and so because of the planned development, they weren't comfortable approving the planned development at the time, so they denied the zoning change at the same time?
Yeah, I believe that was the thinking at the time. It was kind of a package deal. So since then, it has been separated.
Okay, well, and thank you, but that really clears this up then, because as Alderman Roberts has said and many other people up here have said, when we're looking at just the zoning, this is just the first step, and this council has passed, and the Planning Commission has approved zoning changes in the past, because that's usually the first step towards whatever the property owner wants to do with the land. So
One clarification there. A PD was requested, plan development was requested at that time, although it was just a concept plan that was associated with the zoning at that time. So it was not an actual application of a plan development, although we did request that they submit that, but it has not been submitted.
Okay. But even at the time, they didn't separate the zoning from...
There wasn't another application, but it was the fact that there was a concept plan, so there was a development in mind. So even though it wasn't an actual application for a plan development at that time, there was that thought that we have the development, we have the zoning, so.
Okay, I have a minute 40, so I'm still going to try to clarify this.
Okay.
So if the consideration at the Planning Commission was in totality of this with a plan development of 14 lots, the Planning Commission denied this issue then, including the zoning, because of the plan development, even though there was no application?
Because of the concept that was informing what would come forward as a plan development. So in reality, it was only a zoning question at that time, but it was highly biased, I might say, based upon the concept plan that was submitted with the zoning.
Okay, because that's still not what was before them is what I'm hearing. It's because a concept shouldn't be under consideration at that
Right.
time.
But it just showed the possibility of what could come forward as development, and so I think that played into the decision-making.
All right. Well, I believe after this discussion, I only have 30 seconds left, but I think I can support this rezoning because if it does come to a plan development, that will be a whole different conversation. So, thank you. I yield.
Okay. Motion on the floor is for approval of item 26. All in favor of that motion? We're going to read in 45. So motion is to approve. All in favor of approving 26, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? No. Motion carries with 1 no from Modrick. Now we're going to skip down to item 45, which is a request by KTM Design Solutions for McGuire Services LLC for a comprehensive plan amendment to the future land use from forest conservation to low-density neighborhood for property generally described as being located southeast of the intersection of Oak Avenue and Indiana Street. And again, the recommendation from Planning Commission was to deny. Motion approved from Roberts and a second from Laurenti. Okay, all in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? No. Motion carries with 2 noes, Drury and Modrick. Okay, back on the schedule, under ordinances, number 27. First reading, ordinance 6224, an ordinance repealing chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code relating to wards and precincts and adopting a new revised chapter 1.08 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Scott and second by Drew. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 28, first reading, ordinance 6316 regarding supplemental appropriation number 2 for 2019.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drew, second by Roberts. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 29, first reading, ordinance 6314, an ordinance to update the organization of the Department of Community Development by amending Title II of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Motion to approve by Solomon and a second by Modrick. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 30, first reading, ordinance 6282, an ordinance to update references to the Department of Community Development in the zoning code by amending Title 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. Motion to approve by Drury, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Item 31, first reading, ordinance 6309, an ordinance amendment to update references to the Department of Community Development in the subdivision regulations by amending section 16.04.080 and section 16.20.010.
Move to approve.
Motion to approve by Drury, second by Laurenti. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 32, first reading, ordinance number 6311, an ordinance to revise the definition for building setback line where right-of-way has been expanded for fire hydrants by amending section 17.04.125 of the Rapid City Municipal Code.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Scott and the second one to Roberts. And that takes us through the ordinances. Now to Public Work Committee items. We'll go to Public Work Chair Darla Drew.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Okay.
Who wants to vote on item 32 then? So, for approval, say aye.
Aye.
If you're against it, say no. Motion carries. Thanks for the catch. Appreciate that.
Yeah, good one. All right. Under Public Works. Item 33, Rapid City Area Metropolitan Planning Organization 2018 Traffic Volume Counts Report. It was information only. Motion to acknowledge.
Second by Drury.
Oh, that's right. Excuse me. Lisa. That's right, Lisa. Okay.
Okay.
No, go ahead.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. At committee, we did ask to maybe have a briefing on it because it's great information. They put some facts and figures together, and I think for the community, they're going to like to see these numbers. So thank you for bringing that forward. And if, Mayor, if it's okay, we can have this little report?
Yes, please.
Thank you.
Good evening, Kelly Brennan, Long Range Planning. Item number 33 is the 2018 Traffic Volume Counts Report. This is an annual report that we conduct to obtain information about the number of vehicles traveled on selected roadways within the city. This information is used in operational evaluations, traffic modeling, selection design of road network improvements, and also to inform the general public. This is an item that's designated in the Rapid City Area Metropolitan Planning Organization's operations plan as a required informational document. Little background, we do a 1 to 3 day count period throughout the city, and then we adjust it to account for seasonal variations. The data is provided by temporary counters from the Public Works and Engineering Services Department, and then permanent count stations from the SDDOT. These counts are conducted Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays, typically from April to October. This year we had 4 segments of roadway that were over 30,000. This is the same 4 segments that were over 30,000 last year and the year before. So you're looking at West Main Street between Jackson Boulevard and West Street. These 2 are the highest segments consistently every year. Another consistent segment that's over 30,000 is Interstate 90 between I-190 and Haynes Avenue. And then Omaha Street between Mount Rushmore Road and West Boulevard. This document is located on the city's transportation planning site, as well as the Rapid City MPO site. We do go back 6 years on the Rapid City Area MPO website so that developers or concerned citizens can look back and see what trends are happening on the roadways in the city. I'd be happy to answer any questions. There is also a map located on the website, so if anyone wants to see specific counts based on that map, that's available as well.
Okay, Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. Again, I want to thank you for this. The interactive map is really cool, and it's great for the public. It's another reason to share this information because you can go in there and you can see where the traffic counts are in any given location in our community. And streets and infrastructure is so important. It's always a forefront of discussion. And this really shows on that inside 48 hours what's happening on our streets. And I think it advises us and it gives our plan for today and for our future. So again, thank you for this mini report. I look forward to the big ones coming.
Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Ms. Brennan, have you got a total count for us? Was there or a percentage increase of total count for
If you take all the percentages that were changed throughout between 2017 and 2018, we had about a 5% change. That's not really a good data statistic, though, just based on the mythology of it.
Sure.
We do see increased traffic counts consistently on every roadway almost. I mean, on 80% of them. we're getting bigger, traffic is increasing. There's no doubt about that.
Yes, and then you don't separate the types of vehicles either in this report, do you?
We don't. We don't currently have the right equipment to measure axle weights, et cetera. So we don't currently do that. You know, it might be something they look forward to in the future. For example, this is the first year we've done a 3-day count. Previously, we'd only done a 1-day count. And so we're trying to improve the traffic count book to make it better every year.
And then one final question for you. Any roadways within the city that's, I'll use the word major decrease or a significant decrease in traffic?
We saw a few this year, but usually they could be related to construction.
Oh,
If we
sure.
see a giant change in an area, it's usually because an adjacent roadway is under construction. Sometimes there's just an anomaly. There was either an event or a traffic impact
Makes
to
sense.
account as well. So it's better to not look at just the year-to-year counts, but to look at the trends, say, over the past 6 to 7 years. And like I said, that is all available on the MPO website if you're interested in looking back that far.
Yes, thank you. I yield.
Okay, thank you. And the motion on the floor is to acknowledge. All in favor of that, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you very much.
Item 34, a request from BML Properties LLC for a variance to waive the requirement to install sidewalk along Seeger Drive and Taggart Road, Rapid City, per City Ordinance 12.08.060. The recommendation was to deny 3-1 with Modric opposed. I would like to move to approve.
Motion approved by Drew, second by Lewis.
Okay. I'm approving the denial. Right? No, excuse me.
Okay. To clarify the motion.
Please, yes.
Darla
Okay.
Drew.
I was approving the requirement to have a sidewalk. Okay? That's what I want.
So upholding staff.
Yeah.
Okay, time out.
Upholding the denial.
Darla Drew wants to deny item 34, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Approve the denial. 'Cause
Okay,
that's what they said.
who's the second? Drury is the second on that motion. Lisa Modric.
Thank you, Mayor. I just need to go on record because I think that this is something we need to continue to look at, and that's that this is the industrial area that's got land around it, it's got dirt roads around it, it doesn't have connecting sidewalks, it's not walking space because there aren't the kind of businesses out there that are in a walking location. So we're putting distress on property owners when we're doing sidewalks to nowhere that don't have connections. And that's the part that, that I can't support on this and why I have to oppose this, this particular motion is because this area, when you go there, you see that it is not developing like some of the areas are that we are putting sidewalks in, which is an excellent program that we have going. And this may be untouched in the walkability for many decades to come. It's hard to say because of the way this industrial park is. So I think what I feel is that we continue to have these sidewalks come before us because we really need to tweak these ordinances and make sure that we're putting sidewalks in appropriate places where they would be used and not be an encumbrance to businesses that are trying to put industry in our community. And if we put a sidewalk this size around them, they've got to maintain that sidewalk, and maybe they don't have anybody there. Maybe it's all truckers going out at 8 o'clock in the morning and come back at 5. But they've got to maintain that sidewalk once we put it in this industrial park. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor, and I'd like to ask Mr. Tech a question on this particular item, please.
Do.
Mr. Tech, could you give us some input on staff's recommendation, if you will, and what's being proposed here on the agenda item and the motion, if you would, please? Thank you.
Thank you, Alderman Laurenti. Based on the comments received at the Public Works Committee, there was a request for some additional data as far as how many variances had been applied for, how many sidewalks have been built, et cetera, in the area. City staff put together this map. The dark red lines indicate all the sidewalks that have been installed in this area. You'll see 5 properties that have V's on them. Those are properties that were requested a variance. 2 of those properties were a partial variance because they border Elkvale Road, where the variance was granted adjacent to Elkvale Road, which is a rural road section. They also abutted another road, so the variance was denied on those other roads to be placed. There were a number of properties that were built out in this area that were built prior to the requirement of having sidewalks installed at the time of building permit. So in a nutshell, there are 14 lots with sidewalks. There were 5 lots with variances, 3 of which didn't build any sidewalk, 2 of which built partial sidewalks, and then 9 properties that were built prior to the requirement to install sidewalks. So just a little background. You know, our ordinance is written such that when you pull a building permit for either a new structure or over, I believe, a 20% increase over an existing structure, you're required to put sidewalks in. Part of our comprehensive plan, as well as our bike and pedestrian plan that the city has, we encourage multimodal transportation. That is bicycles, foot traffic, as well as vehicular traffic. The way our ordinance is written, we'll eventually get sidewalks on all properties in Rapid City if we go down the road of requiring them at the time of building permit.
Thank you, Mr. Tech, and I appreciate that, and I know we've been asking for these things for a while now. Some of us love to see this, and the variances. Can you point out, you said there were 5. I'm seeing 3, but you know, I'm getting older, so can you, there we go, something fluorescent. There we go. Something that my old eyes can see. The one on the top right, is that a property of ours?
Yes, actually that's
Our
a
cities?
property, City of Rapid City. There's a sewer lift station located on that property, and the city installed sidewalk along Seeger Drive, and the city council approved a variance to not install it along Elkvale Road. Once again, that's a rural road section. There's no place to put sidewalk.
Okay, very good. And I think, honestly, I'm hoping my colleagues will support it, but I've been saying it for years, and now they're providing to us where the sidewalks are and where we're giving all these variances, and I love the data because it tells me we need to get the sidewalks put in. And if anything, we need to call in some other sidewalks that we gave variances to. Maybe we can make some connections. So that might be the next step we need to take with maps like this, and I appreciate staff. Thank you, Dale, very much.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Dale, can you just highlight that section that we're in question of tonight? Just to remind the folks where we're at, what consideration we're taking, because I'm in favor of this as well, and then I'm also in favor of calling in at additional sidewalks as well. So I just wanted to remind the council and to the public to see where this property is at in question. So if we can get sidewalks on both sides, that's even a plus. Thank you.
We'll clarify it before we vote. John Roberts.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not hearing myself. I must be going deaf, too. Usually I can hear myself through this. You know, this is an interesting area. This is always an interesting discussion. I would have absolutely no problem calling in sidewalks if there was connectivity. The biggest problem is once we start piecing in a piece here, a piece there, a piece there, eventually we're going to have to call in all the rest of those anyway. Why don't we just wait until we have some connectivity and call them in? It makes sense to have your sidewalks that are all connected rather than having a piece that somebody can walk on here and then having 2 blocks of nothing, maybe a piece here, maybe a piece here, maybe not. You know, once the area fills in, which it will eventually, we hope, but, you know, right now, unless you are willing to call in what's out there right at the moment, you know, it's one of the things that I dislike is having these conversations all the time, because sometimes we grant the variance, sometimes we don't grant the variance. I mean, we're not being very, we're not being consistent, and we're not being fair to everybody. Either we do it or we don't do it, Either we call them in or we don't call them in. My opinion, though, is why do it when you're building it a sidewalk to nowhere? And I said that 7 years ago was the first time I said that. And, you know, look at the line. I mean, if you want to be fair, let's call the city's one in first. Let's make an example. Let's be our own example. Let's put our own sidewalk in before we ask other people to do it. Not on Elkville Road. Anyway, thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you. We had a really lively discussion about this at the Public Works Committee meeting, and I think that we do need consistency. If someone pulls a building permit, if there is no reason topographically that they can't put in a sidewalk, I think they should be required to put one in. And that, you know, we have placed variances before because of a sidewalk to nowhere, but I contend that a sidewalk to nowhere is going to be a sidewalk to somewhere. And as long as you're going to build that building, you can be responsible for the sidewalk as well. I leave my house at 9 o'clock and come back at 5, and somehow we get the snow shoveled and everything else, even though we aren't there all day. So I think that we can ask the same of our business people, and I think this is the time to do it. And then if we need to call in others, I think this would be a good time to require that as well. We could look at where we want to do that and make this area a great place to walk and work. Thank you.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. I also think we should be consistent and require people to put in their sidewalks. It would, and besides that, if we're going to call them in 3 or 5 years from now, it's much cheaper for this entity to put them in now than it would be 3 to 5 years down the line. So I just say let's just do it now, and let's be consistent and require the sidewalks. Thank you.
Okay, the motion on the floor is to deny the variance. Does that explain it?
Yep.
Deny the variance. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No. 3 noes.
Chad Lewis, John Roberts, Lisa Modrick. Did I get that correct? Motion passes 7-3.
All right, on to item number 34. Authorize staff to advertise for bids for a cationic polymer coagulant for the Mountain View Water Treatment Plant. Estimated cost $29,000. Move to approve.
Second. Second by Drury. All in favor of approval, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Now on to legal finance items. We'll go to the Legal Finance Committee Chairperson, Laura Armstrong.
Okay, number 35, we're going to confirm the appointment of Nicholas Peer and reappointment of Doris Ann Werlinger to the RSVP Plus Community Advisory Council.
Motion to approve, Laurenti, second by Drury. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Number 36, acknowledge the following volunteers for workers' compensation purposes: Dhruv Goyal with the library, Sherry Goyal with the library, Matthew Van Voot with the library, Megan O'Neill with the library, Victoria McDonald with the RSVP Plus, Heidi Pester with the RSVP Plus, and Beverly Wendling with the RSVP Plus.
Motion to approve, Solomon, second by Drury. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Great, thank you. Number 37, authorize the mayor and finance officer to sign electric cooperative agreement with West River Electric Association and Black Hills Electric Cooperative for fiscal year 2020.
Motion to approve, Drury. Second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Number 38, approve resolution number 2019-018, resolution reestablishing petty cash funds and change funds.
Motion to approve, Drew. Second, Nordstrom. And we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Pauline Sumption a question regarding petty cash?
Yes, please.
Thank you. I was looking over the list on petty cash. I know there's some that need larger petty cash, like Civic Center and so on, but what is the balancing, even for the small ones, whether it's $100 or $300, what's the balancing that's done on those petty cash? Is that done daily? And then if there's a shortage or an overage, how is that accounted for?
Thank you for the question. The departments actually will reconcile their own petty cash. They do it as frequently as they choose to, and then they will put in a request for reimbursement for those expenses that they've paid out of petty cash. The city finance office goes in annually and do spot audits unannounced, and to determine if they are in balance or not. And if they are not in balance, they are required to get in balance, and either somebody needs to replace money, or if there's extra, that actually comes back into the city.
So if it is a large amount, like a $20,000 petty cash, which is a large sum of money, it's got some risk, whether it's through theft or outside theft or inside theft. How is that accounted for when it's that large petty cash on a daily basis?
So we have a petty cash policy in place, and as part of that policy, whoever is responsible ultimately for that petty cash has to sign for it, and it is then on them to make sure that it is accurate.
Thank you.
Okay, the motion on 38 is for approval. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, great. Number 40, acknowledge January 2019 sales tax.
Let's go to 39.
Oh, that would be better. Yep. Approve resolution number 2019-021, a resolution levying assessment for abatement of nuisances.
Motion to approve Nordstrom.
Second.
Second by Drury. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay. Now number 40, acknowledge January 2019 sales tax report.
Jason Solomon makes motion to acknowledge. Second by Drury. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, thank you. Number 41, approve resolution number 2019-022, a resolution adopting cemetery regulations.
Motion to approve by Drew and a second by Scott. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Okay, number 42, approve resolution number 2019-023, a resolution amending certain fees to be charged for 2019 for various licenses, permits, and applications.
Move to approve. Motion to approve Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you. Number 43, authorize submission of the Historic Preservation Commission Certified Local Government Grant Application for 2019 through 2020 and receipt of funds associated with the grant.
Motion to approve by Scott, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
And number 44, consideration of property tax abatement as follows. Martin Digler, 2016-2017-2018, approximately $4,398 tax difference for all 3 years. Pennington County recommends to deny.
Okay, we'll go to Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. May I ask Pauline Sumption a question? Thank you, Pauline. I do have a question on this. I talked with the applicants that have been struggling with this item, and of course reading the documents, and I know that this does come before us or before the county from time to time. But one of the concerns that I have is how, as government, we actually instruct people who are becoming owner-occupied on a premises of making sure that this is done. And I know from home ownership that there's no packet that comes out and says you've got to sign this little tiny form in order to show proof of owner-occupied. But in fact, in order for them to take ownership of this, because they were building from scratch, they had an owner-occupied certification come out, which would have been a proper time to acknowledge that a form is required in order to show proof that the government just issued them an owner-occupied certification so that they could move in. It seems like we are missing something, and in this case, it was an extreme miss. Probably goes back to the county, to equalization. So my question is, they had been asked to come before city council on this, however, we're in equalization now. Is this something where they should be filing an appeal so we have the entire case before us?
I would say in this instance, no. I'm going to step back for a second. And the city doesn't issue an owner-occupied status for a property. They will issue, and Ken can correct me if I'm wrong, a certificate of occupancy. We don't know who's going to occupy that house. From a personal standpoint, I know when I've done any house closings, the title company has that piece of paper. They have me sign it there. They offer to mail it into the county for me. I'm not sure why that didn't happen or whatnot.
So just to explain, they actually not only came from out of state, but they bought land and paid for a home that didn't have title or realty because it was that kind of transaction.
You still have closing. I built a house in Sturgis. You still have to go through the closing because then you go from the construction loan to the mortgage.
If they didn't have a construction loan.
That I don't know, but you would still have to somehow get title with it. And I would assume that you would have to go to a title company to do so. But as far as the equalization process, that is strictly to appeal the value of the property that it has been assigned to that parcel. It really has nothing to do with if it's ag and shouldn't be ag, or owner-occupied, not owner-occupied. It is strictly on the valuation.
I know we had a case that was of discussion today, and it had the 20% on it in that case because of non-owner versus owner. Do they have an opportunity to bring this before equalization? Where do we send them back to? Because they were told to come before the city.
The process for any type of abatement within city limits is to first come to the city. I'm not exactly sure why, but that is the first step in the process. My understanding is even if the council said, okay, we'll abate this, I think the county commission can reverse that, just like it can reverse our decisions in the equalization meetings. Today's item on our equalization board, he brought up the 20% difference in property taxes, but that's because he had a rental property, and he did not think that his rental property should be valued the same way as a residential structure, that it should have been looked at the income basis. So it was still based on the valuation and not the owner-occupied versus non-owner-occupied status, where we can make a recommendation to change that status of that classification.
I find that it's unfortunate that a citizen of our community, a young couple that has chosen to move here from out of state, and we welcome them, and then we slap them with these kinds of taxations, 20% taxation, when they have evidence that they've been owners and that they have been in the premises. You would think that there'd be something they can do. So since they were sent to us, I think we have a responsibility to tell them what their next step is, and if it's an equalization so that it can go back to commission, I think we need to give them an answer. What can we do?
So what happens tonight is whether you guys approve or deny the request, I sign a form. It goes
Okay.
back to the county.
Oh.
So you tell the county basically what this board wanted to do. From there, they take it to the next step.
Okay.
We're out of it. Based on the information provided by the equalization office, my understanding is the only way that they would be eligible at this time to get refunds for these 3 years is through an active military deployment or order of some type. So if the state law does not allow for anything like this, I think that's something that should be taken up with the state legislators to make some kind of exception if that's what you feel is strongly needed.
Thank you. I'm out of time.
Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, this is just more commentary, okay? If they were reversed and they were actually owner-occupied this whole time, and it turns out they were supposed to be owner-unoccupied, you better believe the government would come after you for that 20% you owe them. However, when you can prove that you were actually owner-occupied, it would seem just to me that you would get what you have coming back to you, because it's an interest of fairness. The government should we have agreements on what we can and should be taxed, and none of us like the taxes, but we know what we have to. In this case, they can prove they were owner-occupied, and I know what state law says. The state law is messed up, should be changed. If they can prove it, maybe there's a statute of limitations on it, some things like that, but it highlights a flaw in the system. They should not pay more than they're supposed to, and if there was a mistake, we can correct it as jurisdictions, whether it's the city or the county. We can correct that mistake as long as they can prove it. Otherwise, we're taking 20% of the value of this from their pockets. That doesn't actually belong to the government. Now, if they just were making it up and just wanted it and didn't like the value of their property, then it's kind of a, too bad, so sad. But in this situation, where they can prove it, we have an actual dollar amount, and if the roles were reversed, they would be on the hook. If the Digglers lose this whole case, what they've done is perhaps blaze a trail of awareness for all those to say, oh, we did not know this, or there was a mistake, and these notifications may not be the best, maybe there's a better way to do it, or maybe there's a way to prove it within reason. And so I think whether it's 3 years, 1 year, I don't know what that number is. I think that's to be debated with legislative bodies, but I'll tell you, just looking at this in the interest of fairness and what justice is, and if they can prove it, how can you say, yeah, we want your extra 20%? Just because you made a mistake and didn't pay close enough attention to the fine print. Just think we got to be better than that. I just think we are better than that. So just wanted to kind of put that out there, a little bit of a soapbox. I don't normally do that. But I hear exactly what they're saying on this one. And I think that the system is broken. It needs to be improved. Thank you. I yield.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I was going to say it, I guess, caveat emptor. This is a situation where, when you're buying a piece of property, the realtor, I don't know if you had a realtor, okay, the title company, they always give you a little piece of paper when you close a property that says, make sure you appeal for non-owner occupied status, at least if they're closed, never been to my wife. That that's part of the law, and they have to disclose that. Correct me if I'm wrong, John, but it's required by law to disclose it to your title company or whoever handles the transaction. And so there should be, along the way, regardless, even if it wasn't disclosed, you have to do your due diligence somewhere along the way. I apologize, sir. I'm not trying to chastise you. I'm just trying to explain to you what our situation is. There's no way we can resolve this. We can't reverse it. It's not within our jurisdiction to even do that. But it is something that's out there. That's a tax relief that goes out to homeowners. We try to encourage home ownership in this state. And if you're going to buy a piece of property, you just got to really make sure that you're informed completely about the tax implications of that. And maybe it's an accountant's job or whoever, but there's no way that we can change this. And just everybody that buys a piece of property needs to know that it's the first thing you tell your clients is make sure you apply for non-owner occupied status, because it makes a huge difference in your taxes. And there's nothing we can do about it at this point, even if I just can't do anything about it. But I understand your frustration, but I'm just telling you that there's no way you can get it abated. It just won't happen. All right, well, I don't know a question you can ask. I don't have anything to say other than that.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And it looks like Mr. Diggler, you look like you have something you'd like to say, and then I'll chime in afterwards.
Yes, I think he made a comment in the beginning when he was talking. I just wanted to make some clarification. I can't remember actually what he was referring to. But I just want to say this. When we moved here, we bought a property, and we bought a piece of land, and we hired the builder to build for us. We did not have a realtor involved in our property building. We did not have, I hate to have this on a public whatsoever, but we did not have a mortgage person involved or title company involved in our home process. When I went to talk to Shannon, let's say, I went to talk to him, I spoke with his deputy who was there, and at the time, he told us we should have Shannon call us. So Shannon did. And we went to talk to, I talked to Shannon on the phone from the Equalization Department. And Shannon told me, it is my responsibility to know the law, the codified law. As a common taxpayer, we don't know what the law says. We don't know how the law is interpreted. And so you cannot hold us responsible. There should be transparency in everything that is being done. If you say there should be owner-occupied, the common taxpayer should know what that means. How would that affect the person? If you say on owner-occupied, if I am responsible to pay more than what my property worth, then I should know that. But you cannot just send a piece of paper without explaining to me what owner-occupied means or what owner-occupied means. And in fact, we didn't get those communications. So Shannon said that it is my responsibility to know the law, which I'm now aware of. And the piece of paper you're talking about, we didn't remember getting any piece of paper in the mail to us from the Equalization Department telling us that we need to register our home owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied. We cannot remember saying that. Seeing any piece of paper of that kind. And then my wife spoke with this person from the Equalization Department, and never once did they say to us, you have to make sure you register your home owner-occupied.
Thank you. You know, you got stuck in a really strange catch-22 position, because with realtors, like Chad was trying to say, and with mortgage brokers and with title companies, we're required to, well, first of all, in your closing paperwork, you have to file either owner-occupied or non-owner-occupied in the title work. But one of the things that we always tell people is to check it that first year in case it is put in wrong in the county, because mistakes do happen. And, the problem being, I just went through one of these with a good friend of mine to get an abatement on one, but he was a disabled vet. And in state statute, that's the only way you can get a rebate on property taxes. Unfortunately, we don't even have the ability to give you an abatement. We could say we're going to give you an abatement, but it'll go to the county and they'll turn around and they'll just add it back to you, and then they'll come and tell us, you should know the state law. But the only real thing that we can do from this body, like Mr. Solomon said, is talk to our legislators and find a way to get this changed. Because your situation, I agree with you. You should not have to know, all of the law. There should be, on the county side, in this situation, be telling people, are you going to be living in the property? Is it going to be owner-occupied? But they don't do it that way now. They just don't do it that way. It's not part of their system of how they do it. They let the title companies and the realtors and the, take care of that on the other end. Yes. So anyway, yeah, you're in a situation now where really, by state law, there's nothing that we can do to help you. So unfortunately, I'm going to have to vote no on this. Anybody that knows me, if my hands weren't tied by state law, I would gladly give you a rebate on your taxes. But there's nothing legally that any of us from this board can do. So thank you.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. I think it's just unfortunate that we have people that move here from out of state and they build a home and they're raising a family, and this is just the type of people we want to come to South Dakota. They're expected to know South Dakota state law when they're from Connecticut. And, there was an error made along the way. I, too, would give you the rebate. The only thing I could say is maybe you need to appeal your property valuation and you would get it lowered, and it would make up the difference in the long run. That might be circumventing this, but that might be a right way around it. Just saying, but that, those appeals were already due, and Do you have something you'd like to say, Mr. Diegler?
Yeah, I mean, just what you're saying. I mean, we're not per se asking for the cash to be sent back to us. We just say what we pay over our duty as taxpayer, what we're supposed to pay. We have been paying it. We're not refusing to pay what we are responsible to pay. But if they are charging us above what we are, I mean,
I agree.
Making us to pay extra, that is not fair. There's not transparency in the system, and I feel like the amount that we have paid over should be credited towards our future tax or whatsoever, not per se bringing back to us.
And I know you understand that your next step is to go back to the county commissioners and appeal our decision, and hopefully there's some way around this that you can get some relief and a resolution, but I'm sorry. And in all fairness, I did talk to the Dieglers twice on the phone, and I told them it was kind of a county thing, but more than glad to listen to you, and I hope you get some coverage in the news media. I yield.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. I know that a lot of the city council members have tried to explain the position and where the process. We've asked our chief financial officer. So, Mr. and Mrs. Diegler, just want to let you know that the next step, whether this city council approves or makes a, because what we're doing is making a recommendation, makes a recommendation to approve the abatement or makes a recommendation to deny the abatement. This, as the County Equalization Department told you, this is just the first step. And whatever we say tonight, as it's been expressed up here, really doesn't matter. Because this is the first step, and this is just the checkbox that's being marked for you to go to the next step, which is to go to the county. So, but I appreciate you coming and talking to us. I think it's been a great discussion. I don't think these loopholes happen a lot. It just seems like it happened because of the way your purchase of the land and the construction of your building happened. Most of our homeowners usually do get the correct forms filed because they go through realtors and those closing documents. So just wanted to clarify and just try to be very clear so that you understand whatever happens here tonight, seriously, it really doesn't matter, but it opens the door for you to take the next step, and that is to go to the county. Thank you. I yield, Mayor.
Okay, Jason Solomon.
Just one final comment. You know, our hands are tied for state law. I know what state law says, so if nothing else, I think this raises the issue. And you're probably not going to get. It's not going to matter really what we do here tonight, but you've raised the issue. So thank you for fighting. I would encourage reaching out to state legislators and hopefully perhaps get some awareness. And I think some of us also can do that and say, hey, there's a loophole here. And I don't know how much time I have, but Mr. Diegler is approaching the podium. Mr. Diegler.
Yeah, just thank you for saying that, because it's not just about us getting back the 4,000 amount back, but we want the public to be aware of this. Yeah. We want for transparency to be in the system. We want for the law to be changed, okay? Because it is not fair for the common taxpayer who is out there struggling to make ends meet, and they are being told to pay more than what they are to pay. It's not right. It should be clear and open to the public that if you are owner-occupied, you get this benefit. If you are owner-unoccupied, you get to pay this amount. And when I talked to Shannon, he told me it was not the title company responsibility to tell us to register owner-occupied or owner-non-occupied. And again, it is not the realtor responsibility. That's why he told me on the phone. So I'm like, how do I get to know then? He said, it's just your responsibility. All we have to do is to put a piece of paper in the mail to your address. One of the things is every year, the equalization is sending your tax assessment to your home. If you are not occupying that home, why should that assessment go to that identical home and your name is on that? why should they go? If they know that you are not there, if you register that this is not, you are not occupying this home, you will provide different address to the equalization department, and they will send that tax assessment there. But the tax assessment coming to our home, our name is on it, the same address is on the Pennington County website that says, I own this property, and I have no other property under my name there that says that I live there. So you tax me over what I should be able to pay, then you say it is the law. The codified law is not benefiting the common taxpayer.
Absolutely. And so it's, Dr. Diggler, it's all about clarity and that communication in the process. I think that's what we've learned here today, is that there are cracks in the process, that things are falling through. So thank you for bringing it to our attention. I'm out of time. Thank you.
Amanda Scott.
I'd just like to make the motion to deny the tax abatement request.
Okay, a second by John Roberts. I have a motion on the floor to deny. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Did you say no?
I said no.
Drury, Drew, Modrick, Solomon. 4 noes. Did I miss anyone? Okay, motion passes 6-4 then. Sad. Skipping over item 45 now, because we've already done that. Going to item 46 under council items and liaison reports. Item 46, request authorization for funding the remaining vision request for Fitzgerald Field and One Heart Campus using undesignated CIP funds. We'll go to Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. And I had this put on the agenda because of my experience with dealing with Vision Fund projects over the years that I've been on the council. And one of the frustrations that we always have, and sometimes we get feedback from the public on, is that we, and maybe it's the directive, and maybe we need to be more adamant about the directive that we give the Citizen Committee, that when they choose the recommendations of approval or the ones that they want to fund, that we want them to try to fund those as close to, if not 100% of the request. If they make the case for it, obviously. If the Citizen Committee sees that they've made a strong case for it, we ought to probably be a little more directive with that committee about funding those requests fully. And I say that because over the years that I've been on the council, I've seen a few that struggled. They've come back to us for subsidies, and we all are aware of some long-standing subsidies that were at one time probably 2012 fund projects over the years, but it's because we are trying to satisfy too many people. And the reality is we need to try to award these funds fully to the ones that will have the largest impact. And that's what the committee, the Citizen Committee, is trying to do. So just to put a little fine point on that is just to say that we need to try to get that committee to choose less projects, but fully fund the ones that they choose, so that we can make sure that those particular projects that get an award, ultimately get approved by the council, have the best chance to be successful. So that was part of the whole thrust of why I brought this forward. There was a way, after working with the finance office, to go back and look at, I think, important projects, one being a piece of city property that hasn't been touched for decades that is a revenue generator. And they have been taking care of that property for decades, for a long, long time, we all know. And so we have now an opportunity to make that project whole and allow them to do this all in one shot. And we know what construction can be like. So if they can construct their improvements as presented to the Citizen Committee all at once, not only is there a huge savings in construction costs, I should say, I'll pull back on the adjectives, there will be a savings on construction costs because they'll be able to do it all in one shot. But I believe, in fact, One Heart is also one project that I think not everybody wanted to see, but at the same time, it's a project that will benefit the community in the long run. It's hard to see payback on those when you're looking at ones like Fitzgerald. We know that they run that successfully. We know that they bring people here. What we don't know about One Heart is how, on the back end, they're going to be able to help us, because it's going to save on a lot of human services and police and those types of things in the long run. And so there has to be a vision for that. And I think, overall, this is not a perfect proposal, but I think it's perfect in its compromise. It opens up vision funds for One Heart to take their best step forward to be able to secure that property and to move forward and make that happen. However, people will remember that I had some reservations about One Heart. So it was very difficult for me, but I do understand that the council supports it as a whole. And so I thought this was a way for us to help a revenue generator maximize their opportunity and potential, because there is. And I guess what I want to do at this point is have, if we can, Mr. Weaver, if you would, Mr. Tellinghusen, if you would, if you could just briefly, and I'm going to run out of time, maybe somebody else can ask a question to finish it, but just kind of give us a brief synopsis of what this will do for the project to be able to do it all at once, and some of the benefits besides, the field getting covered now with a different type of turf that doesn't have to be watered, which is a lot of money for a field that size. But if you could just briefly speak on that, thank you.
Thank you. Roger Tellinghusen, one of the folks with Fitzgerald Black Hill Sports that made the presentation to the Vision Fund Committee a few weeks ago. Thank you for this opportunity, I guess, first to start out with. I can't tell you how excited we are about the possibility that the renovation of Fitzgerald Field as proposed could all be done in one shot as we originally requested. Not only would we save on the construction costs by not having construction spread out over several years, but the ability to put in, for instance, an artificial turf field, we believe will make that facility much more usable for other activities than just baseball. And certainly for baseball, we won't have rainouts like we haven't had in the past, which of course affects our revenue in terms of the spectators. Virtually all of the improvements for Fitzgerald Field are geared towards the fans themselves, to make this experience of coming to Fitzgerald Field and watching baseball more enjoyable. We believe that will in turn increase attendance, which in turn increases revenues. Tom Weaver is here. I know he can address some of the cash flow projections that he's run insofar as the time period over which these monies might be made available. But I just want to say thank you for considering this, because we are fervent in our belief that this is a worthwhile project. For over 50 years, Fitzgerald Field has become an iconic symbol of sports in this community and around the region and the nation for that matter. And it hasn't cost the city any money, with the single exception of a roof repair claim due to hail, because it was the city's insurance that covered that. Other than that, all of the maintenance has been covered in-house, so to speak, and we would continue to do that. So
very good.
You.
And if you would, I'm sure you're going to be here for a little while longer, so there may be some other questions from council as well. But just to finish off, I think it's going to help, because we've got it frees up these vision funds for One Heart to get their full request as well, and Fitzgerald, and the CIP fund's going to generate conservatively $32 to $35 million over this time period, the 5-year plan. So there are a lot of other things that will come out of CIP that will be done with CIP, a lot more than what will be used by Fitzgerald Field, which is a city property. So I appreciate your input. Thank you.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to fund the balance of the the Fitzgerald request out of the CIP reserves from this, whatever, $3 million. What was the balance, about $2.7 million? Is that approximately correct?
Correct.
Okay, $2.7 million out of the CIP reserves, and if I could get a second, I'll keep the floor.
Say the motion one more time.
I'd like to make a motion to fund the balance of the Fitzgerald Stadium improvements out of the CIP reserve fund.
Balance
Reserve.
after the initial vision award.
Right, yeah, in addition to the initial, well, yeah.
Gotcha. Everyone understand the motion?
So the,
No, not One Heart, the Fitzgerald Stadium, I'm doing one thing at a time here. Well, I don't know, it was just, as presented, it's just kind of a discussion. I'm just making a motion to get us going forward one way or the other. So, to fund the balance of Fitzgerald Stadium improvements using CIP reserve funds.
Okay, I'm just going to ask a question for further clarification. Mr. Laurenti, since you brought this forward, does that motion accomplish the goals that you were looking for?
It does. Sorry. It does, and that I just want to make sure that the motion maker understands that freeing up those vision funds, because we're now using CIP.
No, I wasn't doing that. I'm finishing off. We've already funded $2.3 million, I believe it is, out of the vision for Fitzgerald Stadium. This brings to the final amount. The total request was $5 million. So this is making up the difference of what the balance was left over using CIP funds.
And maybe what we can do is have Pauline, there's a spreadsheet that was attached to this item which broke out how both of them would be funded over the 5-year.
No, I understand that.
I just want to make sure One Heart is getting their vision funds, because we can't use CIP for
Well, no,
One Heart.
This is taking up a lot of my time, Mr. Mayor, because I was going to talk about this stuff, but obviously we've already funded One Heart and Fitzgerald Stadium partially out of vision, both of them. And we have this leftover money in CIP, which I was going to use part of it to fund the remaining balance of Fitzgerald Stadium. That was the intent of my motion.
Okay, got it.
So now that we've got, can I just get some time back?
You get some time back.
I'm not including One Heart in this motion because they're two different subjects as far as I'm concerned.
Okay, we got a motion to fund the balance of the Fitzgerald Stadium out of undesignated CIP
Thank you,
funds.
undesignated cash. Sorry, I was incorrectly speaking.
Is there a second for that motion?
Second.
Second by Laurenti.
If I get the floor back. Okay. So what my point was, I was trying to get at with this whole thing was this is CIP funds are for city-owned properties, which this obviously is. I'd made this point originally at the Vision Committee. I had a pretty bad sinus infection, so I may not have enunciated very well, but my entire premise, my entire idea behind this entire thing is that we, as Mr. Laurenti said, I said this vision is that we keep giving just enough money to fail with these projects, and we need to get them all the way over the finish line. And that's not going to get there with 2.3 million is going to get the stadium pretty much done, but we need to finish it all off and get it completely finished so you don't have this really nice stadium with a really bad field. The rest of the facility needs to be updated as well. So when it's a city-owned project, that's what CIP funds are for, is city-owned projects. One Heart at this point is not a city-owned project, so I have no problem with vision funds being used for that, because that's a different pot of money, but I want to get this project finished off this way. That's part of the reason we didn't use all the money on the vision fund, so we could fund One Heart, and we'd take some of this money and fund the rest of Fitzgerald Stadium, which is a city-owned project. I just want to make sure that that's why I'm coming up when I'm making this motion. So, like I said, it's obviously something that's been needing repair for a long time, and I think everybody agrees on that. And I hope we don't get lost in the politics of it all and just realize we have a city-owned project building here. We have the funds available to finish it and get it done, and we can come back to the One Heart discussion however we need to do that. Thanks.
Lisa Modrick.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a friendly motion that we authorize for funding the remaining vision requests for Fitzgerald Field and One Heart Campus using undesignated CIP funds, and retain the floor if I get a second. Thank you.
Second by Drew, and you have the floor.
Thank you. Is a substitute motion. Yeah, okay. I'll take the friendly out and put it substitute if that's okay, Mayor.
Substitute motion to fund both Fitzgerald and One Heart, as I understood it.
It is. And it's actually in the wording of which the request had come before us by Councilman Laurenti, and true appreciation of this, because although we're talking about city-owned property, what we have with One Heart is an organization that wants to lease back city-owned property, which will be that facility, the asset that we're going to retain from the property. And that asset is only going to grow and build, and the location is perfect for the city to be attached with the county and our public safety zone to have this property there. It makes good sense. The 1.9 and the difference from the 2.3 for the 5 million, the CIP and undesignated funds is there. And if I could throw this question over to Pauline in order to assure us on that funding, Mayor.
Yes.
Thank you. Pauline, can you give us that report?
As Mr. Laurenti indicated, there's a spreadsheet that's attached talking about One Heart and Fitzgerald funding. Based on the review and also the projections for sales tax revenue, in 2019, collective impact would receive $3,857,628 out of the Vision Fund, and in 2020 they would receive $1,142,372 out of the Vision Fund for that total $5 million. In addition, then Vision funding would also give $50,000 to Black Hill Sports. They will have to hire a consultant, probably of some sort, to do the design. They would also receive $1,100,000 out of the CIP undesignated cash. In 2020, they would receive $1,185,904 out of Vision and $1.3 million out of CIP funding. This is approximately $1.3 million collectively more than what they've already been allocated for those 2 years. 2021, there would be about $3,400 left in the Vision that they could then have. 2023, we have $1,086,586 out of CIP funding. In 2024, they would get the remaining $274,105 to make a total between the CIP and Vision funds of $5 million.
So what this identifies with, which is actually excellent, is that we're taking the funds of which are undesignated and doing nothing, and we're applying them to the properties of yesteryear, our property that needs the assistance, needs the upgrades, and continue to build on it. They've got some great plans to use it even more so than they have now, and that upgrade is going to be excellent, and it's an investment back to the city of Rapid City. We get to capitalize on their capitalization. This is excellent money working for money. And then the same thing, the One Heart is taking the hit, but it's actually the organization that's going to lease back. We get to retain the asset. That is our asset. We're going to have that asset. We seem to hang on to assets of our city for a long time. We'll have that for many, many years to come. What we're going to get a return on that $5 million is, I mean, we can't even capture what it will be long after our lifetime. It is good money. Let's get it out of the bank. Let's build our assets in our community, and let's make us stronger. And assets also build bonding opportunities and other things in the future. So the decision we do today is going to be a solid decision that we're setting forth for our generations tomorrow. I hope that we can get this authorization approved as requested by Councilman Laurenti. It was a good request, and I appreciate the work that he, as well as Pauline and all the others, have done to pull this back together again and make greatness happen. And I'll leave my 29 seconds now in case I need to say something else. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm going to support the motion as what's stated on the floor right now, because dividing the question was something I thought about originally, but now that I've heard the whole package from the finance office, I'm a lot more comfortable with it. But gentlemen, if you had a chance to respond to my comments, I can't ask you this question, but if you want to respond to my comments, I'd like to give you that opportunity. What I was very, very concerned about, and I had some discussions with Pat Hall about this as well, who's the primary or president of the sports league. The issue that I had with Fitzgerald Stadium, why I couldn't support it on the Vision Fund portion of it, was the diversity. And Pat has been doing a good job of trying to explain to me what he sees as what is capable of diversity. So I'm just uncomfortable with vision funds being used for some project that's not used for the entire community, so that it can be used in a more diverse environment. So if you want to address those comments, you're welcome to, but with that, I can't ask you the question, but if you're certainly welcome to make the comments.
Mayor, may I respond?
Yes.
Briefly?
Yes.
Councilman Nordstrom, thank you for the comments. What I can tell you is consistent with what we presented to the Vision Fund Committee to begin with, is that by having an artificial turf field at Fitzgerald Stadium, we believe that the variety of uses will expand greatly beyond just baseball. We believe that there are other events that could be scheduled at the stadium, both before the baseball season and after the baseball season, and events that couldn't occur in the past or wouldn't be able to occur now with a natural turf field, because the field becomes somewhat sensitive to the types of activities that are placed upon it. But with artificial turf, we believe that we can achieve that diversity that you speak of, and have a diversity of uses that will make the stadium more user-friendly, more accommodating to other uses, and thus spread out the goodwill, if you will, to the community.
Thank you.
Yield.
John Roberts.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I'm going to be the naysayer here. I support Post 22 strongly, have for years. You know, it's unfortunate that we couldn't have got this funded fully through the first round of the Vision funds. I cannot, in good conscience, support $3.76 million out of CIP, which should be used for our infrastructure, our city projects. When I go to work, which I have twice in the last couple of months, and we have no water at my office building because the water lines are rupturing on North Street and on Haynes Avenue. When you can't drive downtown except for one lane, what was that, a couple of weeks ago when the water line down there ruptured? $3.7 million in CIP pays for quite a little bit of infrastructure. And that's the only reason I can't support this coming out of the CIP fund. I do support Post 22, but I can't support the way we're funding it. We start opening this up, every vision round I've ever went through, we are lacking money in, every single one of them. Now, we've opened up something new that once the Vision Fund goes through and we have projects that we want to fund again that we didn't fund fully, we're going to be robbing every single account in the city of Rapid City. And I just can't do that. In good conscience, I can't do that. I know I'm going to make people upset about this, you know, and the funny part about it is I'm a lame duck. I've got another year on the council. I'm not running again. I could vote on this easily except for my conscience, except for the way I voted for the last 7 years on the way the city of Rapid City should spend money. So the way this is being funded, I can't support it. I do support Post 22. I think this should have been done years ago. I think that we've taken a huge city asset and let it go way too long. And you know, it is a city asset. And it should have been higher up on the Vision Fund funding because it was a city asset. But we went through that whole thing. We did get you a little extra money in the Vision Fund compared to what was recommended. And anyway, I can't support this in good conscience. So thank you.
Amanda Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. So I just want to make a couple comments because Alderman Laurenti had made a point, and You know, every time the Citizens Committee is formed by the mayor, I think due diligence is done as far as those members. And I do know, and I remember the mayor telling us, that the direction he gave this year's 3-year plan citizen committee was to take the full 22, 24 applicants and to vet them out, and they did a marvelous job. They really worked their tails off and did a marvelous job of vetting out every single project that was submitted for the Vision Funds. The mayor's direction was for them not to consider money. His direction was for them to put them in a priority list. They couldn't help themselves from what we received, and they kind of tried to fund multiple projects. And that's what Alderman Laurenti was referring to. So many times we get so many applications, so many deserving projects are looking for any forms of money to help supplement their other revenue streams so they can get these projects done. But I do know the mayor's direction was they just wanted a priority list. It is ultimately up to this city council, who sits as the Vision Fund Committee, to award those dollars. And I applaud the city council. I think we did a marvelous job that night, because we did have a recommendation from the Citizen Committee. They did attach dollars to it. I think we took a look at it, and we may have considered some of the dollars they attached, but for the most part, we discussed each of the projects we awarded money, and we did our job by specifying those funds that were to them. And it was a good discussion. Like Fitzgerald Field and One Heart and Youth and Family Services, and I can go on. There were even some, like the Children's Museum, that didn't even make the Citizens Committee's list. So with that being said, I think there is a good process. I am very uncomfortable with this discussion tonight, because we have an ordinance that specifies how this process should go. We followed the ordinance this city council held, and we let the decisions for the Vision Fund, and the mayor did an excellent job with the city staff of even coming up with more money that was left over from previous projects, so there was more money to be awarded to make sure that we could get really good projects done. But I'm really uncomfortable with this, and I'm going to call it horse trading between two funds, which we're actually opening up and trying to horse trade and juggle some Vision Funds around with just 2 of the 22 to 24 applicants. Where are they? If we're going to open up the Vision Fund and we're going to try to shuffle some funds around, where is Youth and Family Services? Where is Willfully? Where is all the other ones? Where is the softball fields? Where are all the other applicants saying, we want in on this deal if you're going to open it up and reconsider reallocating Vision Funds? That, to me, just, as Alderman Roberts said, with my integrity, I cannot go down this path. Now, if we want to talk about allocating CIP funds for different projects, I will open my ears back up. But right now, this just seems so wrong. The hair on the back of my neck has been up, even when I texted Steve Laurenti last week and I saw the agenda, and I said, what is this? And he just said, it's a discussion item. And I said, okay, I'll be all ears. But when you're trying to look at the attachments and it goes back into a process we already approved, and those applicants are not given the same opportunity, that's wrong, in my opinion. I won't speak for the rest of the council. So the only other point that I wanted to make, too, is when it comes to One Heart, everyone in our community is a very compassionate. I think we have a loving, compassionate, neighborly city. And for the most part, I think we all greet each other with the best intentions, and we look for the best of people. We don't go out thinking that everybody's out to get us. So we are compassionate. But when I hear things being said like this is going to be a city asset, well, in the newspaper, the city attorney even said, well, as a city asset, if it fails, we can sell it. Well, what's that kind of setting it up for? Already we're talking if it fails. That's not very positive. Why would we want it as a city asset? Just so we can sell it off again? That's kind of like, well, we'll put in our 5 million, 3.9 million or 5 million because we plan on getting into the real estate business and selling it off so we can recover our funds. I think that's a slap in the face to One Heart. I really do. I'm out of time. I could go on. I think I've made my points. I am very uncomfortable that not everybody that participated in the Vision Fund application was invited to this dance. Thank you.
Becky Drury.
Thank you, Mayor. May I direct a question to Pauline Sumpton, please?
Yes.
Pauline, when I look at this spreadsheet, and I'm on the one that says proposal, vision fund, CIP funding, total funding, and it goes budget year 2021, 2022, 2023, 2024. So are we budgeting for future years?
In CIP, if you recall, we always have a 5-year plan, and so this would just be part of that 5-year plan. We've already approved preliminary 5-year plan for 2019 to 23. We're starting the process for 2020 to 2025. It's always a revolving 5-year time frame.
So not only would it have to be approved here, it would have to be approved by the CIP committee?
If it's approved here, it really doesn't have to go back to CIP. Normally, it would start at CIP if it were just for that year, but because it covers multiple years, that's why I brought it straight here.
But isn't the same concept that we have a budget every year for the city, and why don't we budget in for a new fire department next year?
That's always a possibility.
Are we jumping the gun here by budgeting for and using future years' money? I'm not understanding. I just need to be clarified.
So this is a CIP 5-year plan. It's not an approved and adopted budget until the year in which we consider that budget. So there's always fine-tuning that can be done between now and then. But I will tell you, historically with CIP, we might do some adjustments for if we have undesignated cash balance over and above the $1 million reserve. But in general, we typically stick with that 5-year plan from year to year. Usually, it's the 5th year that we really look at what kind of projects can we add to our capital improvement plan and what kind of money are we thinking that we'll need.
Thank you. I kind of agree with Mr. Roberts. I had a water break on our street this week, too, and we were out of water all night, and fortunately, we were fine, but when I was running for city council, people asked me what I was interested in and what should the city be doing, and the city should be doing streets, police, fire. Those should be our main priorities, and I believe that's my main priority sitting on the council. And I also believe that if we're going to open up vision funds, let's invite everyone on the list. Whether they made it or not, whether they were funded or not, let's invite everybody. I yield.
Laura Armstrong.
Okay, I'd like to weigh in on this. First and foremost, I want to commend Mr. Laurenti for bringing this forward, as well as the finance officer putting this together. I will admit I was a little confused when I got the email and saw this on. I was wondering how a baseball stadium and a poverty transformation center, why would they be put together? But when you think about it, it's about community and families, and most specifically, children. So when I started as a speech pathologist, I started in the schools, and I saw these kids. I'd see them, and then they disappear for 6 months or 2 years, and then they come back and they pop up somewhere else. And if my information is correct, I think we have 500 children, probably more, that are in poverty level. This is a very difficult population to target. I'm willing to say it's over 1,000 if we expand out. So when you work with these kids, it really gets to you. I have been contacted by many constituents that have overwhelming support for these projects. I did receive one phone call that had some questions and some skepticism, and I received one email. I want to talk just briefly about the email. The email said that they were for Fitzgerald Stadium because they were for the kids, but they were adamantly against the homeless shelter. And to me, it just really didn't make sense because these children are homeless. They're the ones in poverty. These are our responsibilities. So I have full faith that this is going to work, and I understand that there's some skepticism out there, and we're being fiscally responsible. That's our job. But when One Heart came and presented on their vision, their vision presentation, they mentioned that they had diverse operational funding portfolio. They're not going to let this fail. And honestly, I think that we're already paying for this anyway through our firefighters, through our police department. I'm fully behind this because it's for our kids and it's for our families, and I just really think it's our responsibility. Thank you.
Darla Drew.
Thank you, Mayor. As I recall our conversation about One Heart and this money that we're going to or not allocate tonight, it's money to buy and renovate the property. So it's not going towards services, it's going towards the purchase of this building, and which would be an asset to the city. I don't feel that it'll be a failure, so I'm not thinking that we're going to be selling it right away. I think that this is going to work. We've looked at a lot of remedies in Rapid City. We haven't come up with much that has worked. And I want to give this my full support. I'm a lifelong citizen. Now, we put $2 million into Elevate. That's a project that's going to bring in more people, tech companies, those kinds of things, get people to stay here. But if we don't solve our homeless problem and people that are on our streets, I don't know how many great people are going to want to live here. So if we're going to put $2 million into tech and into trying to get great people to live here and work here, we've got to remedy some of our problems. It's time. And this is the answer. And we're not going to fund it. A lot of these the people that are moving in here, they already are funded. They're just going to be in a new place. And all these services will be together. And as far as Fitzgerald Stadium, it is a landmark. It is a reason that people come here. And I've been going there since I was, old enough to go anywhere and smoke cigarettes out and back and everything like that. But, that's my experience. But every once in a while I went inside. And, it's just one of those things that's a landmark. And I think that we can use it to the benefit of our city just a little bit more. And as Councilman Nordstrom was saying, more diversity, more things going on there. It's a great center, and it can be used for other things, whether it's concerts, conventions, conferences, whatever those things might be, corporate picnics, something else can be used for that. So I think these things do work together, and I think it also works with a lot of the projects that we just funded. So I don't think we have to start over again, because what we're doing is bringing this community together to bring it forward, to progress our community in ways that we've never thought of before. We haven't thought we could solve our homeless problem. I didn't think we could. But this is the best thing. This is our best chance right now. And so I'd like to see both of these things happen, because if we do them and we put this all together with what we just said we were going to fund, it makes our city better, and it progresses us forward, and it works with Elevate. So we're not just looking at just the poorest people, we're just going to help them. No, we're helping everybody here, because we're going to make our city a more livable place. So I'm very passionate about Rapid City because I grew up here. And I want to see it go forward, and I want to see some of the problems we've always worked on finally get solved. and I think this is our best chance right now. So I don't think we have to go back and start over. I think we've already started on a very good road, and I think we can finish it up with this by saying yes to it tonight.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I guess, and this is part of the reason I wanted to do the separate parts of this motion, because I wasn't looking to open up the Vision Fund again. I was looking to use the CIP money that was available, because we talked about it during, part of the reason, what I said during the Vision Committee meeting was I wanted to fund all the city projects first and then go back to the nonprofits. And when it was pointed out that there was going to be undesignated cash in CIP, I said, okay, I will, you know, if we can get to that point where we're going to use the extra money to finish out the city projects, that's fine. I'm okay with that. And that's what I thought this discussion was going to be about. I didn't realize it was going to be a chance to fund all of the projects. I'm kind of stuck here because I absolutely have no problem with, you know, I mean, no one's against helping the homeless. I think we do a lot of that in this, on this community. We've allocated a lot of money, $8.1 million, something like that this year. But I want to get Fitzgerald Stadium finished because it's an iconic thing, like we keep saying, but it is a city project, and that's what the CIP money and all this money, the Vision money originally was for city projects as well. I mean, we keep forgetting that, but that's what it was supposed to be used for, is for city projects, and it became a catch-all fund for whoever has their hand out, which is fine. It's done a lot of good in the community. I understand we've switched that, but now I'm kind of lost where I want to go, because I really want to make sure that Fitzgerald gets done, and I don't mind doing One Heart, but I don't want it to be a city asset. I don't want the city to have to take care of it like we take care of the Journey Museum every year, $330,000, whatever it is, for maintenance. We have to do things like that. With the doll, you know, we have to pay maintenance funds because they're city-owned assets, and every year we have to pay money out of the general fund out of our budget to make sure those things are taken care of. So that's just another. And they say, well, we can tell them we're not going to give them any of that in the future, but that's this council. In 10 years, who knows who's going to be there? I mean, as someone once said, it'd be a sticky wicket on this one. I really want both these things to happen, I guess, but Alderwoman Scott makes an excellent point about opening up the Vision Committee again. I mean, all those people that didn't get funded sure would like to be here. And I'm like, my intent, that's why I want to my first motion was just to use the CIP money to deal with one city project, and then if there's money left over to somehow to get the One Heart done, that's what we should do. And you know, we keep talking about diversity and everything. I don't know that I buy all that necessarily. I mean, Post 22 is Post 22's is a lease. You know, they lease the Fitzgerald Stadium, but it's Fitzgerald Stadium. It's Rapid City's asset. It's not Post 22. You know, this is a city-owned project. We have to take care of it. We can't do it halfway, guys. We got to finish off get it all done at once, so it doesn't look like we've did a really nice stadium with a really crappy field. So I don't know where I'm going to go with this, folks. I'm not even quite sure what the motion is at this point. If you could clarify that, I'd appreciate it.
The motion is to use CIP funds to accomplish funding for Fitzgerald Stadium and One Heart, according to the spreadsheet.
Okay. Thank you. I yield.
Okay, Lisa Modrick for 29 seconds.
And I knew I had 29 seconds, so here it comes. Love the quote. Don't do it halfway. This motion doesn't do it halfway. It does it in full. Secondly, this is finishing the funding that was already started with the recommendations of the committee, as well as where we discussed it and made decisions. This is still part of the package. Let's not do it halfway. Again, public safety. This does affect streets. It does affect fire. It does affect police. It creates a quality of life for our people. All people, our children to our elders, whether they're homeless, they're living in their cars, they need a place to go. It's a hand up and not a handout. And Fitzgerald Stadium does the same thing. It puts children on the fields. It gets them off the streets. This is all one big, wonderful package. Don't do it halfway. Let's pass this motion. Thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. Very quickly, in my mind, this is not reopening up the Vision Fund the way the motion is stated. It is strictly the CIP. Since I'm the CIP chair, one of the things that's of interest to me is the comments that were made about the water lines breaking. This project is underway right now that is on the list, and it just got moved up because of that water main break, so it is covered by CIP. Parks, again, are also covered under CIP, so that we have that opportunity to use the CIP funds for parks projects anyway. And if I can read my last, the other thing was with the CIP committee, we take some of our direction from the city council, so we're doing it in a proper procedure. So we're getting our direction how to handle CIP from the direction of the city council tonight's meeting. Thank you, Mayor.
Okay, thank you. John Roberts.
You're welcome, Mr. Mayor. Can I ask the city attorney a question, please?
No. Yes.
I'm sure you don't want me to. Joel Ending, my question is, CIP, One Heart is not a city property. It's a nonprofit. Can we fund nonprofits out of CIP legally?
Well, I think the plan was to fund Fitzgerald out of the CIP and fund One Heart out of the Vision. But if we're purchasing, I would look to probably Pauline, because we would own the property. It would be our property.
Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So what Joel said is true. If we wanted to buy property that would become a city asset, we can still use CIP to do that. We did something similar when we bought some property for fire stations a couple times out of CIP. And granted, one property we still hold, and for a future fire department. The other property we donated to a nonprofit. And so it's been done in the past where we've used CIP to purchase property that remains a city asset. Now, operations, no, we would not use CIP to pay for any type of operations. It would just be for the asset purchase.
And in this proposal, we are not actually purchasing it. They're purchasing it. So does that make a difference?
Actually,
now,
we would be at the closing and signing for the documents.
Okay, well, that's another one of them, because I'm also on the side of, I really don't want the city to own this building, because once we tie ourselves to owning this building, we're going to be responsible for all the maintenance. It's going to, anyway, I'm not going to go there. I just was curious about that. I know how I'm voting anyway. Thank you.
Okay, we have a motion on the floor to use CIP funds to complete funding with Fitzgerald Stadium and One Heart. All in favor of that motion? Let's just have a roll call. It's going to be close.
Armstrong. Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. Scott. Drew. Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis. Motion passes 8-2.
All right, thank you, everyone. And that takes us to item 47, discussion of funding for the design and build of Fire Station 1. We'll go to Jason Solomon.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I believe thank you. Our fire department has a quick video, if we have that queued up and ready to go. While we are loading that up, just a statement here before you press play. I bring this forward because since 1998, we've identified that this station needs work, and there's been a lot of reasons why it's been pushed down the road, from buying other land to all sorts of things. However, we have an opportunity here. I think this council has an opportunity to do something special with Fire Station 1. And so I have three goals I want to do. For one, make sure the community and the council understand the need. Two, we have identified funds for design of Fire Station 1. And three, Pauline can lay out a plan for repayment once we find out what the final cost is for Fire Station 1. So firefighters deserve all that we can give them for all that they do for our community. This has been 20-plus years overdue, and as you'll see in the video, it looks like we have Lieutenant Bussell ready to go. You'll see the need is definitely there, and so I would appreciate your support, your enthusiastic support, Fire Station 1, and I guess we can press play.
I'm Jim Bussell with the Rapid City Fire Department, inviting you to join me on a virtual tour of Fire Station 1. Station 1 was built in 1975 to replace the original 1918 downtown firehouse. Station 1 is much like the rest of our community and our department in that it has undergone many changes in the last 44 years. This is the lobby area. Prior to May of 1991, the area beyond the double doors was a community room and used for trainings, community meetings, city council meetings were even held here. Then in May of 1991, in order to accommodate the need for additional office space, the community room was converted to offices and a library. Then in 2015, the library was split in half to provide additional needed space for EMS billing offices and administrative staff. This is the training room at Fire Station 1. In 1991, when the community room was converted into a library and office space, the training room became a necessity. Prior to May of 1991, this room was part of the dorm room. The dorm room was split in half and the training room came to be. The two offices that you see in the back of the room, the office on the left is part of ambulance billing, and the office on the right is my office, the Public Information Officer's office. Both of those rooms, or both of those offices, were closets until about 2015. The training room is an important part of our organization. It's where morning briefing takes place. It's where most of our training and classes happen. And it's also a room where a lot of community activities take place. This is the Medic 1 dorm room. Right now, Medic 1 runs between 10 and 12 calls in a 24-hour shift, with 3 to 4 of those calls coming after 10 o'clock at night. That necessitates the Medic 1 crew having their own dorm room. Prior to 2015, this particular room was the PIO's office, but because we needed dorm room space for the Medic 1 crew, the PIO moved to the closet off the training room. This is the main Station 1 dorm. This is where firefighters that are not assigned to the medic unit sleep at night when they're on duty. This is the last community dorm in the department, which means there's no individual rooms. So that also means that for our female firefighters, there is no individual space to change. They utilize the lone female bathroom or the large bathroom, which has since been retrofitted, and locks have been added to the doors so that they can change in there in privacy. As we continue down the hall, one thing that you may notice is that we have one dedicated ladies' restroom in the entire building. In 1975, only about 2 or 3 ladies worked in the building at any given time. Today, in 2019, there are on average between 6 and 8 ladies that work in a building at any given time, and that includes firefighters, front office staff, and EMS billing. When Station 1 was built in 1975, the fire service in general was a male-dominated profession, and as such, there were no accommodations made for female firefighters. These are the only 3 showers in the building, and they are in the men's main restroom. With cancer and job-related illness being pushed to the forefront, it's very important that we have the ability to shower and decontaminate after fires. And so the lone accommodation that we have at this point for our female firefighters is bolt locks that have been placed on the doors. This is our Station 1 maintenance bay, where mechanics Mike Holmberg and Tyler Wilcox are hard at work maintaining our fleet. And as you can see right now, we have an ambulance that's in for some preventative maintenance, and we have one of our engines, Engine 6, which is having some major work done to it. This is the Station 1 apparatus floor, where our apparatus are parked. The bay is essentially split into 2 sides. We have our frontline side, which is where we're at right now, and we have our peak load and cross staff side, which is on the other side. It looks a little empty on the other side right now because, as you saw, Medic 4 is getting preventative maintenance, so one of the peak load ambulances has taken its place, and we usually have engine 1 parked over on the other side, but it is serving as engine 6 right now while engine 6 is repaired. We also have engine 4-1 on the other side, which is cross-staffed by the squad crew, which is out on a call right now. And we have a transfer ambulance on the other side, Medic 12, which does the bulk of our inter-facility transfers to places like Thornton, Colorado, Billings, Montana, Rochester, Minnesota, Mandan, North Dakota, and so on. This is the shift commander's office. This is where the battalion chief or an acting shift supervisor, usually a captain, will perform overall shift supervision. They'll monitor calls through our dispatch software, schedule ambulance transfers, work on schedules for upcoming shifts, so on and so forth. Until 1993, this office actually served as fire dispatch. From the time that the station was built until 1993, fire calls were dispatched out of this office. I hope that you've enjoyed this virtual tour of Rapid City Fire Station 1 and found it to be informative. As you can see, the vision of the mayor, city council, and fire department command staff in 1975 brought us to a place where we have a functional building 44 years later. We hope that the vision of the current mayor, city council, and fire department command staff will pave the way for the next 44 years at the Rapid City Fire Department. If you have any questions about this virtual tour, please feel free to contact myself or Fire Chief Rod Seals at 605-394-4180.
Thank you, Chief Seals and Lieutenant Bussell, for providing that interactive tour for all of us. There's clearly a big need for a new fire station, but we got to go in steps. There's phases. And so what I've done is I've worked with Pauline Sumption, who's been a rock star tonight for us already, and is also on this one. Pauline, the next phase we got to do is figure out funding source for design of this facility. And then could you also explain what the repayment could possibly look like down the road?
Pauline Sumption.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. When Jason came forward with this idea to me, it happened to coincide when I got the final invoice on the parking revenue bonds. And I had originally requested close to $1.7 million of that money to be transferred to the parking lot and area fund to pay off those parking revenue bonds. But when I got the invoice, they only needed $1.4 million because they had money sitting in our reserve account that's set up for those bonds. That would leave a little over $300,000 in that line item, that parking ramp line item from 2000, I think it was the 2005 process. We've all obviously already spoken about how the likelihood of even that 1.7 doing a whole lot with the parking ramp was extremely unlikely. And so in my mind, that money would get reverted back to the Vision Fund to do with as the council chose to, or to assign it to another project or become part of another process. However, when Jason came forward with it, that was the first thing that came to my mind is we can take that $300,000 or whatever that actual dollar amount left over is, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, and use that for designing the fire station, because we truly need a solid number, because I have heard over the years anywhere from like $7 million to $16 million, and I need to know where we're at, but I believe we're closer to the $7 million end at this time, and Rod can correct me if I'm wrong. And looking at our balances in our cash accounts moving forward, once we have that dollar amount, we have some opportunities to do an interfund loan, so basically borrow money to ourselves. This is not unprecedented. We've done that when we started the Stormwater Utility Fund. We loaned ourselves some money. One of the areas that I was looking at, and it would have to go through committee and all that, but it would be a combination of some of our insurance funds, one of which would be our health insurance fund. Right now, the city pays 100% of the premiums, and we could do a loan to ourselves for like a 3% interest rate, which is what we've typically done when we've done interdepartmental loans. And it would not only help build this fire station, but it would also help bring in some income to that fund where it could keep those premiums low. The city pays 100% of the single premium, and most of that comes out of the general fund. So it would also then help the general fund because the premiums would stay steady. Looking at the projections in both the vision and the CIP, obviously, we took some of those the funding that was available for the last two projects. However, we could build out an amortization schedule once we know that full amount to where we're just paying interest up front until we make sure that we have all of that funding available. We also have the opportunity in 2 short years to take this project back to the vision committee and through the vision process and possibly even pay it off with that or partial setup for payment. So there's a lot of opportunities there. There's a lot of paths that we could go down to get this done. But I think the most important thing is that we have $300,000 available in the vision fund if that wanted to be reallocated.
Thank you, Pauline, and excellent explanation. So I wanted to present this and not just say, hey, shouldn't we do this, but I wanted to provide at least a roadmap. Our next step is to allocate that $300,000 for the design. And that's what I'm looking for. That'll give us that hard dollar amount. Chief Seals, real quick, you have any thoughts on the design and the $300,000 and if that is sufficient and to provide a design that'll give us a good cost estimate?
My guess is that although it may not do all the blueprints for it, but it would certainly get us down the road of getting that hard number that we need to move forward on what the project's going to ultimately cost.
Okay, very well. I'm out of time. Thank you all very much for your consideration.
Lisa Modry.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to make a motion to approve funding for the design and build of Fire Station 1 using the funding source up to $300,000.
I second.
Thank you. Thank you for the second, and here we go.
Okay, John Roberts.
Thank you very much, and thanks for bringing this forward, Jason. I think that everybody on this council probably knows there's nobody that supports the fire department more than I do. But one of the things that worries me is if we go out and do a design on this right now, I think the best way to fund this is 3 years from now in the Vision Fund. Unfortunately, there's going to be quite a few of us that aren't going to be here in 3 years, so who knows what the next council would do. But the problem is, let's go out and design it next month or 6 months from now or 3 months from now, and if that funding doesn't come forward, those costs aren't worth nothing 3 years from now. I mean, you know, if we do a design and blueprints and all that stuff and we have that already from the architect, absolutely they can take that forward 3 years from now. But unless we have that hard funding, putting all these numbers together, we do. Yeah, we do. We're robbing money from one place to give it to someone else. Let's in 3 years from now actually do a Vision Fund project that makes sense. Let's put some money back into the city, you know, other than nonprofits. I mean, it's great. It's great that we're doing that. It's great that we're supporting all these things, but we're letting our city suffer in the process. So, you know, I think it's great. And don't get me wrong, I think this is a wonderful idea and it's a wonderful project. I just don't see, and maybe, Pauline, let me ask you a question if you don't mind. Is that all right, Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
So we have the funding, but where is the money coming from to pay for this funding? We're going to borrow it from, and how are we going to pay it back?
It would come through the CIP funds.
So
over time, yeah, we would build the amortization schedule where it would be an interest-only payment to start with.
So we're taking more money out of CIP. Why do that when we have so many backlogged projects for water, sewer, roads, drainage, and why don't we wait and put this as a #1 priority on the next Vision Fund round? Anyway, thank you.
Richie Nordstrom.
Thank you, Mayor. One of the reasons why, well, just to respond to the last comment, I'm waiting another 3 years. My opinion, just because of the gender issue that's over there now, and the building codes that we have to, we're not really complying with. So that's why I want to see this move forward right away. The other part of it is using this $300,000 for the design part of it. That's the first step in this process. And then I'm also the liaison for the Health Insurance Committee. We haven't had a chance, as Pauline says, to talk to the Health Insurance Committee, but I see it as a potential, a very strong potential of helping or assisting in the premiums for the employees to not accelerate as fast as they are going up right now. And with the payback from the city, as Pauline has explained already, is that it'll help on their side of it for the insurance premiums, plus helps us on the city side for the general fund and picking up the health insurance as well. So I see this as a win-win for the whole thing. So, and if I got some time left, and I need it later, I'd like to have that time available. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. So 21 years later, we're finally doing what we should have done 21 years ago, to defer or delay or guess that vision is going to be there for the next council, of which we can't predict. That's a crystal ball. That's just tossing something down the road that gets us absolutely nowhere. We've already tossed this 21 years. 21 years later, we're recruiting women to take jobs. One of the jobs we want is in public safety and in fire. That condition is not good enough for a man or a woman. We need to qualify this out, and we need to enhance it. We put them out there at risk every single day, and then we bring them back, and this is how we're going to treat them, with the respect that we have for sleeping and for showering, so that they can go back out at risk again. We're overdue on this. If we set the pace today and we put the discipline in action, and that's what we need to do, it's our council discipline that's going to make the now happen. Then here comes the money. And I know when you go back and you start penciling this out, because you can do it in your own world, if you're borrowing 3% against yourself in order to work a fund, it's benefiting both funds side by side. We're not sending it out there for another benefactor to take our 3% in bonding or otherwise. This is us using the funds of which we have. We have to make our money work. We can't just let it sit and do absolutely nothing when we've got these kinds of needs, and these are the now needs. This is all about the timing. We're making amazing decisions tonight. This is a don't do it halfway, do it all the way. The $300,000, it's one of the best investments we can do to start the now, set the discipline, and make this happen. I think that in 3 years from now, we're going to have a fire station, one that's complete, not waiting for vision funds to start the process, because we might be waiting another 21 years. I hope we consider this. Let's get this thing rolling. It's overdue. Thank you.
Steve Laurenti.
Thank you, Mayor. I fully support this, and I just want to explain. I think what it does, and I'm not going to be here, but I think what it does is lays the groundwork, as has been said, but it sends a message to future council members, which there will be new council members in this next election, that we have already started funding this, that we've laid down a roadmap for this, and it's something that's been needed for a long time. So to me, ultimately, and I agree with Mr. Roberts, I think this needs to be #1 priority, and I hope that it is a #1 priority coming from the city in the next vision round. But I believe ultimately, unless I'm mistaken, and Pauline, you can correct me, but it would seem to me that if we start down this road, get the design, and we're using CIP to get further on this project, that when the vision round comes up, they could request the original principal balance so that the CIP gets refunded for the original balance through vision. So to me, that's just makes sense, and that even sends a greater statement to a future council that previous council, beyond the fact this is for fire, I mean, I honestly don't think that I don't discount the future council members and their priority on police and fire. I don't think there's anybody on this council that doesn't have that infrastructure and public safety in their top 3 priorities for representing the people in their respective wards. So to me, this makes a very large statement on top of the fact that it's almost a no-brainer to fund this and to ultimately refund the entire balance back to CIP when we get to that vision round. I yield.
Chad Lewis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just have to echo Mr. Roberts' idea about designing this early out. I think it'd be better off as a design build. You can do it in the Vision Fund next, all one giant swoop, and the next round of Vision be just a lot easier. I mean, it's not going to delay it anymore. I mean, you're not going to have the money for the entire thing until the Vision Fund comes around anyway. So whether or not you have a design or not doesn't really matter a whole heck of a lot. It's not really going to delay it a heck of a lot, and I think that way you have a better idea of how much money you have to spend, and you also have whatever, who knows what changes in 3 years from now, as far as opportunities that might arise, properties that might be available, different opportunities that are out there, that could happen. So I would rather wait for the Vision Fund next time around and put it on the high priority list. Obviously, I'm not going to be here, but I think the next council will see recognize that need. I'm not comfortable spending $300,000 right now for something that we don't know for sure what the landscape's going to be like in 3 years, or whenever the funding comes by. So that's my feelings on this. Thank you.
Yeah, Heidi, can we have you read back the motion to us, please?
I just have to approve 300,000. The motion was by Modrick, second by Solomon, to use for the design. Up to 300,000, sorry.
Okay, thank you. All right, motion is to approve up to $300,000 for design of Fire Station 1. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Aye. Raise your hand. Okay, time out.
Yeah.
Just time out.
Everybody.
Yeah.
Nordstrom. Modrick. Solomon. Lewis. Armstrong. Laurenti. Drury. Roberts. Scott. Drew. Motion passes 6-4.
Okay, thank you. Now on to appeals. License appeal, Jeremy Heath Lane Security License Appeal. Jeremy Heath Lane Security License Appeals. Jeremy here? Expect him to be here? Jeremy here one last time? Okay, it does not appear.
I'll make a motion to deny the appeal.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to deny the appeal. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Public hearing items 49 through 53. There are no speaker requests for these items. There's only one item on the consent public hearing, and that's item 49. Is there a
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve by Scott, second by Drury. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Non-consent public hearing items, item number 50. Second reading, ordinance 6304, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code. A request by ARC International for Yeshura LLC for a rezoning from medium density residential district to office commercial district for property generally described as being located at 3808 Sheridan Lake Road.
Move to approve. Second.
Motion to approve by Solomon and second by Drury. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. I wonder if I could get the council president to read the rest of the items, please.
Thank you, Mayor. Item number 51 is a second reading, ordinance 6305, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for Sharaf 5 Properties LLC for a rezoning from high-density residential district to urban commercial district for property generally described as being located at 12 East Kansas City Street, and make a motion to approve.
Nordstrom was a second. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 52, second reading, ordinance number 6306, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for Sharaf 5 Properties LLC for a rezoning from general commercial district to urban commercial district for property generally described as being located at 12 East Kansas City Street. I make a motion to approve.
Second.
Second by Becky Drury. All in favor of approval, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item number 53 is a second reading, ordinance number 6307, an ordinance amending section 17.06 of chapter 17 of the Rapid City Municipal Code, a request by KTM Design Solutions, Inc. for Yasmin Design LLC for a rezoning from general commercial district to medium-density residential district for property generally described as being located east of Provider Boulevard, and I make a motion to approve in conjunction with the Plan Development 19 PD 005.
Second by Darla Drew. All in favor of that motion, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And item 54 is the bill list, and we'll go to Finance Officer Pauline Sumption.
There is a slight change to the computer bill list. It was like $5 and some cents. So the new total is $9,872,640.88.
Motion to approve by Laurenti, second by Nordstrom. All in favor of approving the bill list, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn by Scott, second by Laurenti. Everybody said? Aye. All right. Thank you, everyone. We're adjourned.